But we're going to do something completely different this morning. I don't know about you. This should be an interesting conversation, all right? It's not an obvious one, but it is a big news story. 2 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil protesters painted several private jets orange at an airfield where they claim that Taylor Swift's jet had landed just hours before. As far as we have managed to establish, Taylor Swift's jet is not there. But this, of course, follows fast upon yesterday's attack, if that's the correct word to use, and I think it probably is. Yesterday's attack on Stonehenge, where a protester or 2 protesters with a sort of, I suppose it looked a bit like a fire extinguisher. Did it look like a fire extinguisher that was spewing orange powder, as opposed to fire putting out materials? And something quite strange happened to me. I'm not a passionate supporter of Just Stop Oil, but I haven't really given it a great deal of thought since they stopped stopping traffic. Well, let me explain. For reasons that I don't fully understand, I've realised in the last hour that I get more annoyed about protests that target inanimate objects than I do about protests that target people. I don't know that this is enough for a whole hour, but I don't understand it at all. So when people, and also it made me realise that all of the people who reach for the sort of lazy rhetoric of what about an ambulance that can't get through, when they're protesting against protests that involved inconveniencing people, theoretically they should be all right or more comfortable with attacks upon. Oh, you're complaining about me using the word attack now. What word do you want me to use? What's the verb you use to describe what they did to Stonehenge? All right, 84850 for text. I'll wait. I'll wait. Seriously, I'm not going to sit here getting criticised for using a word like it. What's the? Oh, a splurge gun. That's nice, Karen. It was a bit like a splurge gun. Where have we got it? What am I going to say if not attacked? Painted? You can't say painted because that overlooks the illegality of it or the sort of nature of it. No, I don't mean water. When I said fire putting out materials, I meant like a chemical compound that would emerge from a more traditional assault. Well, assault and attack mean the same thing, Bruce. I'm not going to silence the attack critics by using the word assault. What is the correct verb to use to describe performance? Dispensed? Defaced. Can we go with defaced? Do we like defaced? They defaced Stonehenge. Not strong enough, is it? They defaced Stonehenge, it's not strong enough. Targeted? No, because that's not necessarily naughty. Targeting can be good. It's vandalised. I like we like vandalised. They vandalised Stonehenge. And I found myself emotionally reacting with more, what's the word I'm looking for, strength, than when they actually stopped the traffic in London. Don't get really cross with me, all right? I quite liked it when they stopped the traffic in London. I thought that was a really effective protest. I also thought it was quite brave because they ran the risk of being attacked by members of the public, of course, which happened, unfortunately, but also being slightly manhandled, perhaps, by police. There's a word for it, isn't it, when you go all slack and the police have to, you sort of end up weighing more somehow in real terms, and the police have to manhandle you off the public highway. That's what part of the training is. I like defiled, actually, Jane. Defiled is probably even preferable to vandalised, isn't it? They defiled Stonehenge. Does it have to have religious connotations to be defiled, or it has to have some sort of semblance of purity attached to it? I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't angrily defaced. That's from Owen in Highwood. I think you're taking this all a little bit too serious. Desecrated. Like, we could be here all day. Desecrated's nice. Desecrated, defiled, defaced. Desecrated, I'm leaning to at the moment. And I don't know why I found this more offensive than when they actually inconvenience actual human beings. And I think we might start with that question. Why does this form of protest, maybe it doesn't, but if I was to use myself as a case study, if I was to use myself as a guinea pig, why does this form of protest irritate me and hopefully you more than protests that actually inconvenience people and are therefore more meaningful? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. It's a strange question, and it may be that I'm completely weird, but I don't think I am, because the imagery in the front pages and the news coverage is much greater on a national scale than it is when a single street in London is brought to a standstill. So what is going on here? Even Dale Vince was critical of this action yesterday, and Dale Vince has supported Just Stop Oil. I'm a big fan of Dale Vince's, as you know. He was a wonderful guest on Full Disclosure as well, and his not unlike Jeremy Vine in a completely different context this week, demonstrating that if you've got deep enough pockets, you can actually take a stand against some of the madness, not just in the online media, but also in what we would call the traditional media. But even he said, with some caveats about there being much more important things to get cross or worried about than some people blowing orange smoke at Stonehenge. But even he said that he didn't approve of this act. And I want to know why that is. I want to know why you think the assault, attack, the defilement, the defacing, the vandalism of an inanimate object, albeit one with a degree of well, not a degree, with enormous sort of historical value. There's no lasting damage being done to it. Why does this irritate more? And then the second question, does that make it more or less effective from the point of view of Just Stop Oil's cause? So from a very personal perspective, I don't fully understand why I'm more irritated. I mean, I'm not supportive of this action. My first thought was, you bloody idiots. That was my first thought. That is not my first thought when, a vicar climbs on top of a train or a housewife sits down and super glues herself to the M25. In those contexts, my first thought, because I'm fairly well clued up on the reality of climate change, my first thought is, I'm so grateful that people like you exist, because I haven't managed to get to where you've got to and where you so clearly should be. So my first thought on days like that, when human beings are being put out, are being inconvenienced, are being targeted, my first thought then is good for you, to the protesters. But when to a lesser extent, when they throw stuff at a painting, but when they target Stonehenge in the way that they did yesterday, for some reason, I'm really cross about it. I'm really disgusted. And then I double check, and it turns out that, aside from a slight debate over the possible impact on lichen or lichen, however you're supposed to pronounce that word, there is no lasting damage. That possibility aside, there's no lasting damage. The attention has been secured. The front pages are everywhere. Even when we weren't in a general election campaign and desperate to talk about something other than politics for an hour, this would be garnering huge amounts of attention. So on paper, you're thinking to yourself, this has worked really well. And yet, in reality, you're thinking, oh, you silly sausages, that won't have won a single person over to the Just Stop Oil cause. All it has done, I think, is alienate people. So they've been on a journey as well. So that's two questions. Sorry to go around the houses, but I wanted to get it right. Two questions. Why does this offend us more than attacks on humans or the inconveniencing of humans? And the second question, this doesn't work, does it? Some of it works. Where's the line, do you think, between protest that works or protest that is good for the cause? Even if it annoys a lot of people, the central cause is being propelled or promoted, versus having the opposite effect, versus actions that actually make support for the cause less likely. This is really, really interesting, actually, from a regular correspondent, Emma, who is very, very, very much on the same side of the argument as Just Stop Oil. And they write, it was an attack on Stonehenge. I'm now invested in the idea that Just Stop Oil has been infiltrated by people who want the public to hate environmental protesters. You don't touch archaeology, not even with corn flour, which, of course, flour plus water equals glue. They are morons and annoying the exact population most minded to support their cause. They go on, I'm now waiting for them to target churches, synagogues, mosques, the 7/7 memorials and other grave markers. I'm not going to abandon the cause of environmentalism, but Just Stop Oil are dead to me. It's irritating because it's empty-headed vandalism against a delicate ecosystem that has endured human attentions for thousands of years. It's an unintelligent action against a symbol of scientific discovery. It's the Romans deforesting oak groves. It's Napoleon using the Sphinx for cannon practice. It's the US driving tanks over the hanging gardens of Babylon. It's rubbish behaviour from people who claim to be caretakers. And luckily, they've annoyed pagans at the exact height of the year, which means they'll get threefold back upon them. That's a beautiful illustration of knowledge of pagan doctrines. You get what you give, and good flipping luck to them, because they'll need it. And that is a much better articulation than anything I could manage about Just Stop Oil achieving the polar opposite of what they intended to with this protest. And as someone who quite likes it when they bring streets to a standstill, I'm trying to work out what exactly has gone wrong here. Tim's in Croydon. Tim, what do you think?
Hi, James. Good morning. I'm not sure what about this topic has sort of caused me to ring in for the first time ever.
But that's an answer to the question, or at least that's a concord with me, isn't it? Is that you are surprised by the strength of your feelings.
There is something deep inside, and I think, I don't know, I was going to ask you, did you have the same reaction to the Mona Lisa being... Not quite. I am, the thing that I'm most puzzled by is why I've got more emotional investment in inanimate objects than I do in human beings. So when human beings are inconvenienced, I quite like the protest, but when inanimate objects are targeted in this way, I don't. But no, I felt something much more visceral about Stonehenge than I did even about Mona Lisa. Yeah. I think the reason why, I think it's sort of, this philosophical value of art. Yes. Or value of these objects, because at the end of the day, Stonehenge is a rock. Yes. And we shouldn't be that upset about paint on a rock, but the Stonehenge represents something far more important almost than humanity itself, or maybe not humanity itself, but at least a couple of humans delayed on their commute. Not to mention, obviously, the actual vandalism is probably a more criminal and more maybe heinous act than just annoying people or frustrating people in traffic.
I don't know, technically. I mean, just super gluing yourself to a road is probably quite a serious offence. People have been jailed for climbing on bridges, haven't they? So I think in criminal terms, it's probably not as serious. But
it might actually cause more harm,
in social
it could cause more harm,
I don't know what the word is. It's a funny one. And what does it do to your needle with regard to supporting or not supporting the cause? You can't abandon the cause because of the behaviour of some fellow travellers. But I think Just Stop Oil are now doing more harm to the cause than good.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think they know what they're doing, and they're obviously very clever at what they're doing. They literally want this kind of coverage and outrage, and they know how to sort of annoy people. I don't know about the conspiracy theories about how it's actually, meant to dissuade people from supporting environmentalism.
Like a psyop. I don't know if it's a. I mean, it does happen. I mean, there are recorded cases of it, but yeah, you'd need a little bit more evidence before you went down that road, I think.
Yeah, where I think it sort of leaves me is that I just have to separate the two. I sort of I treat them as extremists, and I think they don't represent the sort of true path of where we're meant to.
And yet when they were disrupting traffic or climbing up bridges, they did seem, to me at least, to be doing good work. There's a very interesting American on Twitter who I've not come across before, called James Medlock, and he wrote something a while ago that is really pertinent to everything that we've heard on the programme so far today. He wrote, people may differ on optimal protest tactics, but I think a good rule of thumb is that you should behave in a manner that is clearly distinguishable from the way that paid plants from your adversaries would act in an effort to discredit you. And I really think, looking at the images from yesterday, that is precisely what paid plants who'd infiltrated Just Stop Oil would do if they were trying to discredit the organisation that they'd infiltrated. And yes, it does sound a bit like a conspiracy theory, and we don't really do conspiracy theories on this programme. Nigel Farage yesterday promised to withdraw Britain from the World Economic Forum in the event of reform the limited company known as Reform becoming a government. And if you want to know what conspiracy theories look like, have a look at some of the responses to that, or indeed to people like me pointing out we can't withdraw our membership of the World Economic Forum because Britain is not a member of the World Economic Forum. In fact, no countries in the world are members of the Economic Forum, but he knows exactly who he's appealing to with those sort of lies or nonsenses, and conspiracy theories barely covers it. But on this one, I love that line. It behave in a way that is distinguishable from how paid plants would behave in an attempt to discredit your organisation. Richard is in Cirencester. Richard, what would you like to say?
I'm with the other caller, basically. I mean, I was neutral on the stop oil concept.
Yeah.
If they interrupt people's travelling to work, it's no danger. We were lucky enough to go to Stonehenge and have a guided tour. They do tours every so often with the public. And I had 2 children there. My mother came along. It was a family outing. But we were told, all of us were very strictly told, do not touch the stones in any way. There is, I don't know about the lichen and so forth,
sure,
but we were told you're not allowed to touch it. And it made a very strong point for that. And I think the fact, I've never phoned up a
radio station
in the past.
In fact, I can tell from your voice you're a little bit surprised to find yourself on air, aren't you, Richard?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Like, darn it, they actually invited me. No, yeah, it's just something so passionate and so sort of core. I mean, we're caretakers of the stones. We don't look after them. They're thousands of years old. Mm. And yet you look at places around Bristol or any other place where you have exposed stone on the side of hills. You get graffiti, especially near the Clifton Suspension Bridge. You've got drawings up the walls going back hundreds of years, and no one bats an eyelid if someone goes up there and tags it for something else, because it's just, that's what it is.
Sure.
But you're right, there's something about Stonehenge which makes a complete difference. It's something which it just feels so wrong that the stop oil, I mean, I've got 2 children. We want to leave something for them which isn't going to be a dead planet. But
there's a trade-off between, because I in previous issues, previous conversations, previous programs, I would have said, we're talking about it, it's got loads of headlines, it's taking up a huge amount of bandwidth, mission accomplished, it's brilliant. And I thought that was true, but I don't think that's true today, because we're talking about it, it's got loads of headlines, it's taking up loads of bandwidth, and I think they've done their cause harm. So there's a tipping point there. And what struck me as weirdest this morning, although it's getting less weird by the minute, the more we think about it, is that you've got more of an emotional investment in an inanimate object than you have in your neighbour's commute, your neighbour's peace of mind, your neighbour's journey to work. But the more we talk about that, the more sense that makes. I
mean, to be somewhat topical right now, it feels like they've done an own goal. You know, they've literally just done more harm than good. It's up there with, I mean, if you stick themselves to a road, the road's not going to care too much. You get resurfaced in a couple of years, you'll never know.
And everyone can jump up and down about it and talk and talk. But it does. It feels, you're right, it does feel like an almighty own goal. Almost feels like a Gerald Ratner moment, and younger listeners can look that up. 27 minutes after 10 is the time, although they may not need to look it up, because I think that coming back early from D-Day for Rishi Sunak was a Gerald Ratner moment, and I think I may have said so at the time, which means you've already looked it up. Elliot is in Eastbourne. Elliot, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. Well, from Eastbourne, sitting on the M25. But yeah.
Just to be clear, you're in traffic. You're not embarking on your own Just Stop Oil protest at the moment.
No, I'm not halfway up the bridge. Don't worry about that.
Go on.
But no, when they were climbing up bridges and stopping traffic, as a van driver who's regularly out on the road of the M25, I've had far more sympathy with them.
Yes.
They do now. And your caller but one, who said he'd never called a radio show before but felt compelled to do so, I'm in exactly the same boat.
How bizarre. That's 3 out of 3 have broken their radio phone-in duck. And all 3 of you, without managing to be condescending, for which I'm grateful, have managed to convey the sense that you can't quite believe that you phoned a radio station. But such is the depth of your feeling. And, of course, my brilliance at identifying that feeling that we're all sharing this morning.
And my partner, who is a practicing pagan, messaged me yesterday when the news broke and saying that what have they done? Why have they done this? And we spoke about it when I got home. figure it out.
Yeah.
What was the goal here? What were they trying to achieve? I can understand the
phone line's getting a bit glitchy, which is always a problem. But I mean, the short answer would be front page of the Daily Express, front page of the Daily Mail, front page of the Times. Job done. Everyone's talking about us. So why has that not worked?
Not garnered them any support, surely, because the sort of people that frequent Stonehenge, the sort of place that hold that place,
that's part of it as well,
in such esteem,
yes,
are people that would generally sympathise with their cause.
And more. I mean, there'd be absolute early adopters. I thought that was what was so powerful about Emma's message at the top of the show, about alienating precisely the people who have essentially been environmentalists for thousands of years. It's coming up to 10:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. There's quite a lot going on here. I can't remember the last time we had so many calls at the top of a topic from people who... sometimes when one person says something, everybody else says it afterwards as well, like, first-time caller or something like that. But all the calls so far, can't quite believe their feelings are being reflected by the radio to a degree that they've actually phoned in for the very first time. There's something about the stuff that's really old, isn't there, that speaks to the strange relationship that we have with mortality. The idea that things can endure long before the span of a human life, long before the span of a single human life, can be strangely reassuring. It can be strangely uplifting in a way to think of that. It staves off the bleakness of our own mortality. And Stonehenge in this country, probably, partly for cultural reasons, partly because of where it is, the fact that you can see it from the road if you're driving into that part of England. There are other henges, there are other stone circles, some of which may be of even greater cultural or archaeological significance. But Stonehenge has assumed that place in the national consciousness. And that phrase from Chris, I think, is absolutely beautiful. The tendrils reaching from Stonehenge into all of our feelings. And Emma is in Sussex. I've never contacted any radio station before, but I found all this incredibly upsetting. As a pagan, I appreciate the underlying cause of Just Stop Oil, as environmental issues are of great concern and felt deeply by many of us. But these sites, particularly the numerous stone circles and ancient burial sites across the UK, are inextricably linked to our connection to our ancestors. I should have read this earlier. You're putting it much better than I did, Emma. Sorry. Places of reflection and connection. So to desecrate these sites is incredibly hurtful. Many pagans view these sites as our churches. And so to act in this way is the height of disrespect and the cause of great sadness. This really isn't the way to, quotes, bring the people with you for their cause. And a few people, Nick is currently at the top of my inbox, reminding us of the destruction or the chopping down of the sycamore gap tree on Hadrian's Wall, which felt like an affront to something much deeper than stopping traffic or disrupting commuters, although it doesn't have the pagan connotations that Stonehenge has. It does also speak to that sort of I know I'm sounding a bit pompous, not pompous, a bit airy-fairy, but I mean it. It's not pretentious if you mean it. It's only pretentious if you're pretending. It speaks to the sort of transcending of the quotidian, of mere mortality, and that's why this is such an epic mistake. I think such a huge mistake. 10:35 is the time. Hey, look, we're having a bit of a love fest, but you're more than welcome to disagree with the central thrust of this conversation. Matthew is in Manchester. Matthew, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Also a first-time caller.
Welcome. Let's see if we can get all the way to 11 o'clock without speaking to anybody for the second time. But anyway, carry on.
I was just thinking about, I don't know if you know how many pieces of art the suffragettes destroyed.
Destroyed or damaged? Did they actually destroy?
Well, damaged. Admittedly destroyed and damaged to different things. But they slashed sort of pieces of art. I mean, they used to blow stuff up. And I guess I'm thinking, no one looks back at the suffragette movement and says, was it worth it for women's suffrage?
I don't know why. Hang on. I don't know why, and it may be. I don't know. I might be misremembering this, but for some reason the words "Rokeby Venus" are in my mind when you talk about the suffragettes targeting art.
I'll be honest, I Googled it and I've got Toilet of Venus.
Oh, have you?
I was baffled.
Maybe I've got it wrong. Rokeby Venus. I think there was a famous statue, probably named after some Brit who discovered it, nicked it and brought it back to Britain. So it's often how it goes, like the Elgin marbles. But the Rokeby Venus, a painting that she cut. I don't know. But anyway, they did do it. You're right. And your point, therefore, is, well, we got over that, so we'll probably get over this as well.
I guess when we're sort of talking about as climate change is the end of the world and sort of people are going, we probably should do something about it, but we don't want to sort of raise taxes or anything. And it does feel like sort of people are running around going, why won't everyone wake up? And it's like, I don't know if they are trying to recruit people to the cause necessarily, but they are saying this is really important. I don't know whether I agree with it even, but I guess I'm just like, does the cause justify the means? Because we almost look back, when we look back on something like the women's suffrage, we sort of go, we'll forgive all the bombings and even like when they killed people.
Yeah, but I don't think that and oddly, I've just Googled it as well, and we are talking about the same painting. I think the official title is The Toilet of Venus, which, you you live and learn, don't you, hey? I don't know that those particular acts are seen historically as having facilitated or accelerated universal suffrage. The attacking the paintings, it has been argued that did not really achieve the final goal. But it's hard to separate the two because the final goal was achieved and these things happened on the way towards that final goal. So you didn't feel yesterday the sort of visceral offence that other callers have described, or you did?
I didn't feel a visceral offence. But I wasn't like, good on you, I wasn't like, oh, great, they're damaged. I was like, it's difficult because I'm like, it is kind of one of those things that I worry about sometimes. I'm like, how far are we off a militant wing breaking off of like, and I'm definitely disagree with that, but I'm like, I suppose as you see these things getting more and more bolder, at least, it's like, and it is the end, and it feels really odd when it's like, oh, what are they trying to stop? The end of the world, basically. It's like,
so, and that is their frustration, isn't it? Is that their cause is so obviously noble and urgent, and that the problem is so obviously the fact that so many don't understand that or deny that or live in or deluded about that or just do that thing in the Leonardo DiCaprio film. They just don't look up. They just don't worry about it. Entire film was an analogy for the climate crisis, as you know, and that pushes them to ever more extreme actions. But I felt that we'd reached the point yesterday, where those actions had become too extreme for people minded to support them. And whether you are a pagan or not, the reverence that we feel towards these ancient stones has been offended. It is a really odd thing. Thank you, Matthew. Dale Vince, I told you he'd commented, partly, I think, because Rishi Sunak asked him to personally, sort of singled him out for criticism. So he wrote, I don't support what Just Stop Oil did today. It's that simple. And then added, but there are far worse actions we could be focusing on, far more harmful ones, like pushing 2 million children and their families into poverty, which is what Sunak and the Conservatives have done with their 2-child cap on benefits. I suppose in the interest of political balance, I should point out that the Labour Party are currently not intending to change that policy, something Keir Starmer's been asked about quite a lot. Deborah's in Liverpool. Deborah, what do you think?
Well, for once in my life, James, I disagree with you.
Thank God for that. Thank goodness for that, Deborah.
The last conversation we had was about pushing, clenching around childbirth. So
yes.
I hope this one goes. I hope this one goes as well.
It's been a while. But you've broken my show, though, because we were going to do first-time callers only all the way to 11 o'clock. And
do you want me to hang up then?
No, it's all right. You're here now. On you go.
Oh, all right. Oh, okay. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I've checked on the BBC website, and it's done no lasting harm to Stonehenge.
No.
I'm not an environmentalist sort of activist in any way. the nearest I get to that is sticking my plastic bottles in the right bin.
Yes.
But I just think it's the pictures of it on the TV were absolutely brilliant.
Gosh.
And in a way, so when stuff happens in London, which I don't give a particular...
Of course.
I've got a thing against London and Manchester because I come from Liverpool. But anyway...
What are you rebelling against? What have you got? What have you got?
Yeah.
Carry on.
I usually say bloody London, bloody Manchester.
Yes, I hear a lot of that. But anyway, on we go.
Yeah. Anyway.
But this one has worked. This one has landed with you.
It has. So, the more the merrier that they stop traffic in London. I don't give a what's it. But this one, gosh, the images were absolutely superb. It's done, and I know people say about the lichen, and if it had rained, it would have perhaps caused problems. But I would have hoped that they would have had a look at the weather forecast before doing this spraying thing that they did. It caused no harm, and what an image! I'm
glad you were listening today.
Absolutely bowled over.
I'm glad you were listening today because we needed a little bit of balance, and I can see what you mean. And I mean, the spectacle is probably the word we're looking for, isn't it? The spectacle.
That's it. The spectacle.
Yeah,
it was superb. I listen to radio more than I watch the telly.
Yeah, very
occasionally, and particularly you, darling.
Oh well, thank you.
But anyway, so the sound was turned down last night, and all I saw was this image. Blinking heck. And when you think about humanity, it links to, us as a species going back 5,000 years.
Yes.
And potentially us as a species not going forward 5,000 years. I think it's just brilliant.
I hadn't thought of it like that. To be clear, though, in conclusion, it hasn't pushed you to a place where you're going to be even more environmentally conscious. You're not going to go beyond your plastic bottle recycling or go on the Just Stop Oil training course and learn how to make yourself go all floppy in the middle of the road.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I haven't got grandchildren yet. So, and that's a hint to my kids.
Well, that's the next topic, Deborah, would you believe? The next hour is young people deciding not to have children. Let's hope that doesn't include yours.
Yeah, so when I have grandchildren, maybe I'll have a different view. My son will not have grandchildren because he doesn't want to bring it into this world. So
and there you go. You've knitted together the two topics of conversation quite perfectly. Louise agrees with you as well. It's the best Just Stop Oil prospect ever. It's coming up to 11:15. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And, of course, today is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. It's a different length depending on the latitude of where you are. So the amount of sunlight and on a planetary scale, because we don't spin on a vertical axis, we spin on it's like Mystery Hour this now, we spin on a tilted axis, which means that the amount of sunlight reaching different regions of the Earth changes during the year as the Earth orbits the sun. And today here, for the northern half of the Earth, the summer solstice is today, when we are most tilted towards the sun. The sun will be directly overhead of us at the Tropic of Cancer. So that's exciting. Imad is in Epsom. Imad, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello.
I hadn't heard about this news story up until I put on the radio this morning, basically.
Okay.
And my first thoughts went back to Iraq and ISIS, to be honest.
Good grief, yes.
There was a period where they were blowing up historical sites, artifacts, literally whole kind of archaeological sites.
Yes.
Dating back long before the Romans, quite early ones as well as relatively new ones. And even back then, my gut instinct was always, it kind of speaks to something in your core. These places that have survived thousands of years and who knows how long they'll last a bit longer for the next generation. It just resonates with something deep in your core, to be honest.
And you know, and I know that the damage or that the actions at Stonehenge were not destructive. I mean, the stones will be back to normal by now.
If they started with this, will they try something a bit further next time?
Well, no, I was thinking more. I was thinking more that we don't control our initial emotional reaction, and to see them under threat in this way, to see them being defaced in this way, does fit into the same emotional framework. Yeah, exactly.
That it's completely off limits. Places of this kind, as far as I'm concerned, should be an absolute red line. Like you said, without giving them ideas, basically, there are a lot of places you can put smoke that can do a lot more damage and get you bigger headlines potentially than this.
Yes.
But the touching places of this kind in any way, shape or form, as far as I'm concerned, is an absolute red line.
And yet the last caller was very powerful with the idea that precisely because it has been here for 5,000 years, it has a resonance in the context of a warning that if we don't change course, we will not be here for the next 5,000, the next 500 years, arguably. So in some ways, what you describe as the grounds for a particular offence could be the grounds for a particular relevance or a particular pertinence for this monument.
While I can understand her position, it still remains, as far as I'm concerned, it would be a bit of a red line. There are better ways to do it than to go after these kinds of locations.
Yeah. As you say, you can respect each other's positions. I'm much, much closer to yours, albeit with a side order of pause for thought. Imad, thank you. And yeah, there is something. It's Philistinic, if that's a word. Philistinian? It's Philistine behaviour when the ancients come under any form of attack. And yes, I stress again, everybody knows, including Imad and me, that the quotes damage, end quotes, to Stonehenge is very quickly remedied with some concern about lichen. But that initial moment of assault upon the artefact, the assault upon the site, does I think speak to similar principles, similar instincts. Paul's in Willesden Green. Paul, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi James. Thanks for having me on. Well, I'm a retired police detective with the Met, so everything I've done is about risk to life. So when I see something like this, it's shocking, it's outrageous.
Oh, it's a terrible phone line. What have you done since you spoke to the producer? Because I really want to hear this angle, this perspective, but the phone line's all over the place, Paul. Oh, it's just got worse. No, you try and fix that up. I'd like to get you on before the end. Meanwhile, Tim's in Rayleigh. Tim, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning. It's been fascinating, actually, the last 15 minutes listening to some of the things you said, because I was phoning in really to hopefully bring a little bit of balance to all of this.
Yes.
I work in heritage. I've worked at Stonehenge on a number of occasions.
Oh, yeah.
Firstly, it's worth pointing out that, yes, it's quite a special place. If you walk amongst the stones, especially if you're lucky enough to walk amongst the stones by yourself and you can be taken in by the grandeur of it all, it's quite spectacular. I have to choose my words very carefully because I don't want to upset various people I know when it comes to their kind of like religious beliefs and bits and pieces. But Stonehenge predates paganism in any form, and everything that happens there on the solstice
I can tell now. I just got the sniff in my nostrils of you kicking off some almighty argument that I have absolutely no qualifications to conduct. You just waded right in there, didn't you? And you've upset the pagan community of listeners to this program.
I'm trying not to do.
Well, it's too late now. You could have bloody warned me, Tim. Honestly. All right, carry on then. In for a penny.
My thing is the yes, as you've already said in the last little while, when I watched this yesterday, first thing, my first instinct was, oh my word, look at that. That's incredible. That's nuts. And I was boiling mad because I work all over the country in historical sites, and I love them. I love every single one for different reasons. It's because it's what I do. But actually, in the last 10 minutes, you pointed out, and I've enjoyed a couple of your other callers. those stones have been there for 5,000, 3,000, 4,000 years.
Yeah.
They will be there for another 4,000 or 5,000 years. No damage was really done yesterday. More damage was done in the 1930s by the Ministry of Works putting them back together. There are amazing photographs of them, of bits of rock being picked up by cranes and plonked on the top.
I've seen that. That's absolute madness, isn't it?
And because there are memes online of setting the clock forward or back at Stonehenge, because so this place is a special place. It is visited by tens of thousands of people, around 10,000 people every single day. Most of them don't go there and appreciate the grandeur. They're there on a tourist trail. They walk around the outside.
Yes, they get a whiff of the grandeur. Yeah. So what about briefly? Because I want to squeeze Paul in before the end.
Yeah.
What about the Just Stop Oil cause in the context?
I don't think they've done themselves any favours because of, like you said earlier in the show, and a lot of the kind of people who venerate and worship at Stonehenge. Good luck to them. They are likely to be Just Stop Oil supporters.
Too late now. So got it, but not this. And that's the thing, isn't it, about not being binary or not being a victim of footballification. You can approve of the cause, but it doesn't mean you have to approve of every single thing that is done by people who are on the same team as you. Tim, thank you. And back to Paul, retired cop. What was the angle that your past as a detective brought to this conversation, Paul?
Yeah, I hope this is better.
Perfect.
It's just the fact that whenever I see something like this, and I've been working with Extinction Rebellion for 5 years, so there's in many different types of action, and it's really tough to choose an action that is going to get purchase and get some traction, but doesn't cause harm. So I look at actions for do they cause harm or not, and this one doesn't actually cross the boundary of criminal damage, really, because it was temporary and minor, and it was part of a protest. So it's very unlikely to go anywhere. I think it was brilliant. It was offensive. It caused outrage, obviously, but we have to look at what real.
The phone, and there goes the phone. To be fair, you made the point pretty powerfully, and in some ways, that's at the heart of the whole conversation, because it does, as you say, it fits the harm to life criteria. It prevents permanent damage. All of the things that you would objectively think made it a protest that people would approve of have been fulfilled. All of those criteria have been met, and yet the entire hour, as you've heard, and I know you have, the entire hour has been examining the strangeness of the reaction, and I think it actually is precisely because of the kind of box-ticking exercise that you've described, being a conversation that takes place in the realms of the entirely rational, and Stonehenge as a monument and also as a word, as a concept, as a phenomenon, speaks to something that goes beyond the rational for many British people. It goes deeper, and that's why it looks to me like a massive misjudgment, and yet to you like a really strong intervention, because it did no major damage, if any, and it caused huge outrage, and it drew huge amounts of attention, and there was no danger to anybody's life, either the protesters or members of the public. But which is weird, because we're back where we started, wondering why it is so many so offensive. Io is in Romford with the last word on this. What's it going to be, Io?
Hi, James. I disagree with you. At work, we listen to LBC all the time. They call me the Black James O'Brien because I always agree with you. That's why I never call you. I always call Nick.
I like that. Carry on.
But I believe that this protest, I don't see what the big outrage is. The first thing is the damage. There's no damage caused. No one was inconvenienced. Every time they do something in the street and they stop people, it's, ambulance couldn't get through. I had to go and do my appointment again. I had to reschedule. I've been waiting for ages, whatever. We hear all of this all the time.
Yeah, you're right.
On this particular occasion, these people, they've made their point. It's gone all around the world. The pictures have gone there. Raised the profile. It rains every day in the UK. As soon as it rains, that's all going to go back to normal. Probably rain tomorrow. We'll be back to normal. I can't really see why everybody's getting there.
It's a moral outrage. That's what it is. So normally you're absolutely right. I'd be the one pointing this out, but on this occasion I've got completely caught up in it, in the emotion. Yeah. I'm not apologising for it, or indeed retreating from that position. But you're right.
you had a caller a few callers ago who tried to compare them to what happened with ISIS.
Comparing the initial emotional reaction, not comparing the...
All right, fair enough. For me, there's no comparison, because what ISIS were doing, they were intentionally trying to destroy it forever.
Yes.
Essentially, that's what they were trying to do. Just Stop Oil, we're not trying to intentionally destroy it forever. To be honest with you, they've probably done a lot of testing, probably done a lot of consulting, probably thought about it quite hard about what they could do to, like you said, fulfill the criteria of a peaceful protest. This is the UK. This is peaceful protest. Guys,
mission accomplished. Okay, so given all of that, and I'm late for the news, so briefly on this one, given all of that, why has it apparently backfired?
To be honest with you, I don't really know. It hasn't backfired for me. I mean, my initial reaction to us when I saw it was, they're back.
Well, there we go. We've done it. We've done it. We've done it in 60 minutes. We've covered every single... If this was a dice, that would be the 6. We've got every single face of the die covered on the programme this morning, which is incredibly gratifying. Thank you, Io. Some big news from the Supreme Court, actually, very pertinent to the conversation we were having in the last hour, involving the granting of new licences for gas and oil project, and the verdict is exactly what the environmentalists wanted, and any granting of new licenses will have to take into account the greenhouse gas consequences of burning the fuel that is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not mined, is it? What is it? Secured? Scored? What? Drilled. Drilled's a good word. Well done. And so that, I don't know whether I would have noticed that quite as keenly, whether it would have landed quite as hard if we hadn't just been talking about Just Stop Oil's protest at Stonehenge yesterday. But that is, by any measure, a very important story, and will have great impact on the future granting of gas and oil licences. Although Labour, of course, this week recommitted to halting all future oil and gas licences as well, which, just to knit everything together quite perfectly, which activists from organisations like Just Stop Oil claim was influenced by their extremist road blocking tactics, is the phrase that the Daily Mail uses.